back to Taylor Time Live. We're so glad you joined us. Today we have an exciting show for you on residential realities, and we'll be taking a look at some areas there where hopefully we can help you find ways to streamline your business or selling process, communicating with customers, things like that. So I'll walk you through our agenda in a moment. But first, I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and joining me today in studio is Gary Scheidker, our Director of Tech Services. Gary, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here, Seth.
Good. Glad you made it up with all this weather.
Yeah.
So.
It's a beautiful day out there.
And then also joining me remotely, we have Robert Varden, Executive Director of CFI. Robert, welcome.
Hey, Seth. Glad to be here, buddy. How you doing, Gary? Don? Good to see you guys.
Absolutely. Good to see you, too. How's your weather treating you, Robert?
Well, you know, I can't really talk about it because I'm working from my office in Belize, and it's like 82 degrees outside. And yet my poor friends are kind of frozen in there in Texas right now. So
yep.
I try not to talk too much about that. I was going to send a nice picture of my porch having coffee yesterday while we're looking at the ocean, and I thought, don't do that, Robert. That would just be mean. So,
well, sorry to call you out on live then, but hey, we really appreciate you being here and tuning in with us. And then
always a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. For us too. Joining us remotely as well is Don Roberts, President and CEO of Central Alabama Flooring. Don, thank you for being here.
How we doing? Yeah, Robert's got it really tough. Unfortunately, in Alabama, we got a very little amount of snow, and it like shut everything down. So, being the guy from Michigan living in Alabama, I get a lot of crud when they keep telling me, you know, you live in the South now. You're not a Northerner down here. You got to act like it. So
yep.
I get frustrated in the light snow category.
Yeah. Well, Don, do you mind sharing with us just a little bit about kind of your experience in the flooring industry and more importantly, what you're up to these days?
Well, been in the flooring industry a little over 46 years as of now. But we've got a lot going on currently. I'm on the board of directors of the World Floor Covering Association, currently their secretary. And we have, a year ago, we formed the Floor Covering Education Foundation, which is meant to attack, along with distributors, manufacturers, training companies. Robert's company happens to be one of them. The shortage of installation contractors and in trades in general. We just recently hired, in fact, I'm in Dalton, I'm just a few blocks away from you guys. Came in last night because it was raining, but we were supposed to have our first get together with our new executive director, Jim Aaron, who started this Monday. So we've got the director in place. We've got a small team that's supporting him right now, and we're getting our plan together to help attack this industry issue. And if you read the trades today, I saw another one came out in Floor Covering Weekly today. It's an issue. It's not going away, and it's only growing. And this pandemic hasn't helped that cause as well. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know in December, I don't. If you weren't able to join us for those viewing in December, we actually did a special Taylor Time Live featuring the FCEF, and we talked all about what they're doing and what they're up to and how you can be a part of the solution. So if you haven't checked that out, that was our December of last year Taylor Time Live event. So Don, anything else cool that you're up to? I know you do some other things in the industry. Tell us about that briefly, and then we'll jump in.
You know, I've been writing for Floor Covering Weekly for almost 7 years now. I write a column on retail. As we were joking earlier, most of what I write comes from my experience, something that happened the week before.
Right.
It's real world stuff. I mean, we deal in a different situation when you're sitting in a corporate office or in a distributorship or a manufacturer's office. You know, it's great to look at a lot of things on paper, but until you get down on the front lines where all those things that you say is easy to have happen actually goes on and is done, it's a different world out there. So we've got a lot going on, but independent retailers are doing well through this. I mean, customers are spending money on remodeling and home improvement, and the people that are ready for it, the people that are providing good service and that can do the full job are excelling at this. So.
Yep. Well, and you said it just a minute ago. You said, it's very different on paper versus the real world, and that's exactly why we named this episode Residential Realities. And so let's go ahead. I'll tell you what we're going to cover, and then we'll go ahead and start talking about it. So if we can get the agenda up here, we're going to cover effective selling, and there will be some great tips from these guys on how to really improve that process. Then we're going to cover installation challenges and talk about some of the differences between the things that you'll face with new versus occupied, and how you can overcome those. Then the importance of communication, and really, as we all know, that's probably one of the biggest things right there. And then we'll discuss the bottom line, kind of what's the take home, what can you do, what can you implement to really see a change. So without holding it up anymore, let's go ahead and jump in. So let's start off by talking about effective selling. And I know we talked a little bit earlier. Robert, do you mind kind of starting us off on this and talking a little bit about how to be effective in selling? And then Dawn will come to you very quickly.
Sure.
Well, I think the sales process, and again, we're talking Don's category more than mine. I'm more on the installation side, but the bottom line, I think whether it's the installation or the sales from the beginning, because I've always sought out that, good installers are actually good salespeople. They're not only selling their own talents, but they're selling the customer on, just anything in it, so they come back to Don. One of the most, I think, key components, and I think Don will probably reverberate on this, is just really communication, training. And when I started preparing for this thing, I had sales and I had installation, and as I started putting it, it's like it was the same thing in both categories. For both salespeople and installers, it's recruiting, it's training, it's how you retain them, how you keep them, how you properly train them. So yeah, it's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, for sure. Dawn, what do you see in your world when it comes to selling, and what are some of the major things that you see as being key drivers for your success?
Well, okay, so we live in a world where change happens, almost monthly. Somebody's coming out with for example, in whether it's a laminate or an LVT, a new locking system. I think somebody threw out a number there. I can't remember what that number was, but there's like 400 different locking systems out there that are being used in some form, shape, or whatever, and that's not counting the ones that get made up on the fly by some of these manufacturers in China. But communication, right? So we all have reps that come into our stores and they want to show us this really nice, latest, greatest new product. But how many of them actually take the time to go through, training not only the salespeople, but my store's installation manager who has to deal with all of my installers, and maybe asking for a time, by the way, we've got a new product here that's really going to save your installers a ton of time on the installation process. But it isn't a hammer and block method. There's a whole new method here that they need to learn and understand. Because right now, I don't care what tongue and groove system or what click system you've got out there. If you're not telling the installers how to do it, they're doing it like the one they did before, and before that, and before that. So everybody's banging the heck out of stuff that they shouldn't be banging the heck out of.
Yeah.
And by the way, we have a disclaimer. It's called instructions in a box. And, I'd love to see how many people actually pull that out and read it, because the fine print and the 16 pages that you have to avoid, it's a world out there that we need to do a much better job of training and educating. And by the way, on the sales side as well, salespeople need to set expectations with a customer that are realistic. I'm one of these believers that, you set the bar low enough to separate yourself from your competition, but not so high that you can't make it over yourself.
Right.
And a lot of dealers do that as well, right?
Yeah.
So
we're kind of talking about two different sides, so to speak, right? You have the flooring manufacturer rep. You mentioned that a flooring manufacturer will send their sales rep in to your offices to sell you a new product, and how important that is for them to really tell the attributes and the installation techniques and anything different or new about that product, because then your salespeople are going to need to go out and sell that, right, to a contractor or homeowner, whoever it is that you're selling that to. So there's a few steps in that process that are really key. Gary, I know you've had a history in flooring as well, and previous to being here, I believe you owned some some installation shops as well.
I owned a small chain of flooring stores, 7 stores in the St. Louis area, and invariably the best salespeople that we had knew their products the best, and they didn't oversell products. They qualified the customer when they came in. One of the salesmen that I probably learned the most from was a gentleman named Mike Fedoli. When he actually worked for my dad first and then later on for me, but Mike had owned his own business. And when a customer came in, he asked them simple questions. How many children do you have? Do you have pets? What type of lifestyle do you have? What are your biggest concerns with your flooring? And he would actually qualify the people and figure out what they wanted. And it's funny, I've actually heard him tell retail customers, ma'am, I'm not going to sell you that. And they would look at him astonished, and he would say, well, I don't want you to have a failure. I don't want you to have a problem, and I want to see you at the store or out in the out at a restaurant or something. I want to be able to talk to you like a friend. I don't want you to be an enemy of mine. And then they would take his advice, and he would make a recommendation, and they were always happy with it. That's the beauty of it. You qualify the customer, you let them know what they let you know what they need, and then you try to fill that need. But the education for the salesperson is absolutely critical, like Don said.
Yeah. Gary, I think there's so many books on that. Sorry, Robert. I was just going to say there's so many books on question-based selling and on qualifying your prospects, and making sure that you're talking to them. So that's definitely a huge part of it. Robert, sorry to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
No, I just, as an installer, I will say in my career, unless it's been a manufacturer is specifically making a product for the installer, whether it's a Shernox or whether it's a Taylor or it's a Mapei, I've never had any rep of the actual material have any, if Shaw's got a new product or Mohawk's got a new product, they might do something, let's say on their Arrow or whatever. But, I don't think I know too many installers that actually have had the rep come out and say, hey, by the way, we're making this new system. It's got a new locking system. Let me show you how this locking system works. Because I can tell you right now, if we're training and we're doing an LVT class, regardless, maybe we'll have 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 locking systems if we're lucky in this class to teach the guys over the next 2 days. And what happens is, I can tell you right now, the biggest problem, the biggest fight they have, it's not ripping, it's not trimming, that stuff cuts so easily, it's actually putting it together, especially with the longer planks. And what happens is, like Don said, they use one system, they get comfortable with that, and suddenly the next system comes out. And also too, some of the products they're making, whether they're coming from China or whatever, the locking systems are so brittle, they're hitting them with that mallet, they break it off. So to have the actual manufacturer's reps come in and not only train the salespeople maybe of the benefits and how to sell the product, but maybe there is a session with the installers. Just, it doesn't take long. We pick it up real quick if you just show us, is it a drop in, it is a slide in, depending on the system it is. And Don's right. We just met with a manufacturer who they patent locking systems. And I think he said currently they had something like 268 patents. There's a bunch of them. Granted, there's not that many on our flooring, thank goodness, but there's a lot. So there's a lot. It would love it as far as just from the communication and the training standpoint. We keep going on and on about it.
So I exaggerate a little because I'm in sales. So that's just what you do.
That's where the 400 came from.
Don't let the truth get in front of a good story. You know what I mean? But here's a great example though. I mean, and it's true. I can't remember and again, forgive me manufacturers if you're doing this today, but if you are, I don't know about it. But Pergo was the last one that I know of that came out truly with a new product, and they saw the need to go out there and train the world on their product. In fact, you had to be before they would even honor a claim, you had to be a Pergo certified installer. Now, Armstrong did this for years, right? I mean, with their products and stuff like that. But Pergo was the last one, and that was the beginning of the floating tongue and groove stuff. One of the other things as a retailer, so I advertise a lot, and I know that my customer has to see my ad 6 to 7 times before it starts to sink in, right? But yet our training, whether we do it with installers or we do it with our salespeople or the reps are doing it with my people, they come in, spend a half hour with somebody, pat them on the butt and say, here, go sell off my display. And you don't see the guy for, 8 weeks, probably minimum in most cases. and they expect you to have known everything. I've told every manufacturer's rep that I have, and they've all heard this conversation. So if there's some on the call here, they're going to close their ears. But I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you come in and train my people, wait a week to 10 days, and send them a test on what you trained them on, and see what they heard and see what they learned.
Yeah.
I have yet to have one manufacturer or distributor rep take me up on it. But you know what? It's a shame, because you'll find out what they didn't learn, and then you can come back and teach them the difference, and you can make them more effective on your product. And by the way, salespeople don't want to appear stupid to a customer. They don't want to be able to ask questions that they don't know the answer of. So if you wonder why your product isn't selling on somebody's showroom, it's because they're afraid to go over there and talk about it, because they've got their favorites. They may be stuck on Quartec, and Quartec's the only click product that they're going to sell. Now the Quartec people are going, yay, that's great. But the rest of you guys need to get on the ball,
So yeah, I mean, that definitely would fall under, the old adage, which you just said, of salespeople never want to act like they don't know the answer. But under effective selling, that's probably one of the most effective sales practices, is just being honest. And if you don't know the answer, no customer is ever going to be hurt if you say, you know what, I'm not sure, but I'll get you the answer. They'd rather hear that than something made up. So
hey, look
especially if it
around our
costs you money.
showroom. We've got 40,000 products here. I didn't memorize all of them, but I'll find you the answer. Absolutely.
So Don, how many products do you really have? How much did you inflate that?
I think it's only 39,000.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I kind of overdid.
Well, then
But
we got the 80-20 rule, so that falls in there too.
Yep.
Well, and you know what? We just did the math too lately, and it's more like the 1585 rule. We use RFMS in our business, and Terry Wheat happens to be my partner, and so he's been going through our books and everything else, and literally looking at who we're dealing with vendor wise, and literally you look at the top 15% of your sales. It is literally, just a handful of vendors. And it's crazy what we're doing. The top 80% of our sales is just a handful of vendors.
Yeah, I've got a question.
We've got all these products in there to sell, that top 15%.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
Robert,
Don, I
go
got a
ahead.
quick question. I've known some very successful retailers over the years that I think, I'm not going to say it was made their success, but I think it was a small part of their success, where they did a great job of actually selling quality installation. Do you focus on that much?
We do. You almost have to. That's what separates yourself from the competition. Being a part of Carpet One, for years we had our installation excellence program, which was great. Your installers became 5 Diamond certified and what have you. But you had to focus on that, and you had to focus on what you could do, and whether you're giving a lifetime installation warranty out. Because at the end of the day, I love these dealers that it's been 1 year in a day, and I'm sorry, your warranty's up. Well, that doesn't fly. If I truly have a labor-related warranty, if it was truly a labor problem, I'm going to fix it. I don't care when it was. If it's because of my labor, it should have been done right. Should have been done right from the beginning. Same thing goes with manufacturers. You got to hold them accountable when they sold me a SPC product that had a click system on it that was less than 1.5 millimeters thick, and it just snaps off.
So
You can't abuse the customer.
Yeah, let's talk some about that. So let's transition. Before we do, though, I'd like to put the number up on the bottom of the screen. So if you have questions, we encourage you at any point throughout this to text them in. We will be answering those live at the end. So take advantage of this time and the knowledge that's on this call, and feel free to text those numbers in. So we'll also keep scrolling this intermittently throughout. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the installation challenges. So I've heard a few things of, there's so many different types of click systems, and then there's obviously different challenges that come in with installation. And so how do we navigate that? So Gary, let me pick on you first,
Okay.
and then we'll move over. I'm sure Robert has some good stuff to say on this too. But what are some of the challenges that you see, and I know Dawn will too. What are some of the challenges you see as far as installation and how to overcome those, especially when it comes to new versus occupied?
Yeah, new and occupied are two totally different things. When you're working in new construction, the biggest obstacle you have is having the HVAC operational. So if you're installing a flooring type that, like an LVT product or hardwood flooring or something that is sensitive to temperature fluctuations or humidity fluctuations, it is critical to get those buildings up and operational so that you can actually acclimate the product properly and follow the instructions of the flooring manufacturer. When you're working in an occupied space, you're working around the customer, and
Right.
they've got children and pets and things like that. You need to make as little mess and be in and out as quickly as possible and create as little odor as possible. So you need to
Right.
select products that are going to actually be beneficial for them. The acclimation is still critical, so all of those things are going to still follow suit. So
Yeah.
most of the same issues are going to be there, but you just got a different set of situations in each situation.
And would you say, if in doubt, if you're not an read the instructions kind of guy, if in doubt, just give it 72 hours of acclimation for everything,
Yeah,
right? At
72
least.
hours is a kind of a rule of thumb, but there can be products with longer acclimation periods. I saw a bamboo floor that required 28 days of acclimation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what that's doing is basically being able to throw the flooring contractor under the bus saying he didn't acclimate properly. And
Right.
it's just to me, that was just a ridiculous one. But the acclimation periods are really more to acclimate the product to temperature and humidity. So once it's not necessarily a duration of time, it's till that product actually equalizes.
Yeah.
So I always encourage a flooring installer to have an infrared thermometer. They can check the temperature of the product, especially with LVT and LVP, and make certain that the flooring hasn't been shocked, so you're not going to have any dimensional changes.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let's get Robert back in here and Dawn. So there you guys are. So on installation challenges, what do you guys see as far as, walking through? I know new obviously is probably different. Dawn, what would you say is most of your, what do you guys focus on mostly? Is it new? Is it occupied?
We're both. We're about 55% retail, and the rest builder, multifamily, light commercial. We have.
Yeah, but with residential, I'm saying in your residential market,
residential?
is most of that new construction, or is most of what you guys do?
It's probably 25% new, 75% occupied.
Okay.
On the new side, the biggest challenges we have, one of my markets is pretty much a slab market. Tuscaloosa is pretty much all slabs, where Birmingham has got kind of a combination of basement, crawl space, and slab. But today with some of these guys putting up slabs and getting houses up quick, and you don't have cured concrete, you've got a lot of issues with concrete lately. And again, the solve oil and everything that people have been talking about, LVT being totally waterproof. I mean, if you remember when we first got LVT, we weren't going to have to put down moisture barriers with the manufacturers. We were going to save on moisture barriers because LVT was going to act as a moisture barrier. Well, yeah, it does, and it floats as one too. It's kind of neat how that works. But you've got all those type of issues with concrete. I mean, moisture, when you're talking hydrostatic pressure, you can have one house next to another house, and one house will have the issue and the other one won't. One will have it when you do the install, and it won't show up for 4 months, and it changes. But it all falls back on the installation contractor. It doesn't fall back on that builder not doing all of his prep work properly. If you read most instructions, the builder's supposed to give you a slab ready for flooring. Very rarely does that happen, and the burden gets put on the flooring contractor. And then you've got all kinds out there. You got guys that do everything by the book and do it all right, but lose the job because you had somebody come out there that shortcut everything and they took the job away from you. And unfortunately, that house won't see you again for 7, 8, 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Robert, go ahead and chime in. I know you're probably ready.
Well, there again, when you look at the builder versus, what I consider the occupied, they both have their issues, totally different set of issues in many cases. It's kind of Gary and even Don, how many builders actually have the HVAC system running, for 24 to 72 hours prior to you starting the job? I mean, typically we get to the door, we open the door. If it's unlocked, we go in, there's mess everywhere. Sometimes there's trades still in there. There's no GC to get a hold of, to contact to either get these guys out or, I mean, it's a whole new set of circumstances there. About the best thing I can say on the occupied side is, because you get installers and they kind of like one or the other. Some like both, but again, some say, well, I don't want to have to deal with the homeowner, so I like the builder side. Well, you still got, again, your set of issues there. What I'd say to the installers going into the occupied side, some of the most critical things we run into usually falls back, and I hate to, bury Don and his salespeople, but a lot of times it falls back on the salespeople from the standpoint of not communicating well who's responsible for what. So if there was any takeaways for the salespeople, you got to cover that massive antique armoire and who's going to move that, who's going to be responsible for that, and all the electronics that have to be disconnected and reconnected. And probably from the installer standpoint, I think the best recommendation I could make, especially with technology of cell phones and video and everything else, is, a lot of times, again, our business is made up of, mostly subcontractors. Sometimes the subcontractor, of course, he's working by the foot, by the yard. So he's in there, he just wants to get in there, get it done, and get out of there. That's how, he makes his money. But he misses out too many times on that initial, I guess you could call the handshake with the homeowner. Walking in, introducing yourself. Don't look like you're in a rush, like you want to blow through there. Say hello, do a pre-installation walkthrough with that customer, confirm the materials of that customer, where it's going, how it's going, that initial few minutes you spend with the customer can make a night and day difference of the entire job. And then, of course, always we did a post, walkthrough inspection if possible. So that, again, because a lot of times I can tell you, if an installer is doing that post walkthrough with the customer, he may be something, oh shoot, there's a little 3-inch piece behind the door that I didn't get trimmed down. I mean, he catches sometimes, I used to say to the guys, it's that second or third walkthrough at the end of the job. You walked in the room, you look good, okay, looks good, you close the door, we'll do it again, just for the heck of it. Again, it's amazing how much the problems come from 2%. The last 2% of the job is always what comes back to haunt anybody, typically.
Mm.
Yeah. The same thing goes for personalities, right? I've got installers that, my salespeople say, do not send him out to my job. Do not send him out to my job. Now, he's an awesome installer. Terrible bedside manner, right? So you don't want to put him in a house with a customer that, Mrs. Jones, who loves her home and has got 2 kids there, during the installation and everything else, and they go in there with this attitude. The best installer with a bad attitude isn't your best installer. You can take an average installer with an absolute awesome people skills and attitude, and a customer will forgive everything, every minor little thing that he does wrong. But that guy with the bad attitude, that's just the primo installer, they'll watch over everything he does. They'll nitpick everything he does, whether it's justified or not, just because they didn't treat people well. But the same thing goes with salespeople. Salespeople that have an attitude, or they shouldn't even have got out of bed that day and come into work. If you're not prepared to deal with a customer, you shouldn't be walking into a customer's house.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Wow.
correct.
And the only other thing, Seth, I might throw at that is, one thing, we've done a lot of training where we actually end up with installers and salespeople in the same certification class. And it ends up being a phenomenal class because you watch these 2 kind of somewhat independent groups work together over the next 2 days. And suddenly the salespeople are realizing, hey, that Robert, he's not such a, I won't say a bad word, but he's not such a bad guy after all. And suddenly the installers looks at the salesperson and says, man, they're not so evil after all. Because the bottom line, and I think every retailer, installer, everybody listening to this call needs to understand, the homeowner don't see you as separate, whether you're a subcontractor or not. They see you as they're doing this business with, Don Roberts and his company and so forth. And so we've always had the, one team, one goal. And I think for a retailer not to be working with this team, meaning the installation group, a little closer, and making it look and feel like that to the end user is an absolute mistake.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a difference too, guys. I mean, in my store in Tuscaloosa, my installation goes out of the same building that my salespeople are in every day. So they can walk into the back warehouse, they can talk to the installer, they can sit and go through the job with the guy if they have something to deal with or whatever. Whereas in my Birmingham location, my warehouse is separate from my showrooms. So they don't have that same relationship. In Tuscaloosa, the installers and the salespeople kind of look out for each other because they have that bond. And it's more adversarial up in Birmingham because they don't. Only time they seem to get together and talk is when there's a problem. Well, if all you're doing is talking about problems all the time, you're not going to get really close. So I think I need to do a better job getting my teams together, and it's made me think about this when I'm watching this here. Another thing I'll tell you is in Tuscaloosa, my installers are employees. I've never had employee installers until I came down to Tuscaloosa back in 2014. All my life, they've been subcontractors. And I will tell you, if you're a retailer out there today, you use probably most of these guys on a regular basis, at least half of them. Look into making them employees and getting them a part of the team and have them be on the same side of the fence as you, because I'll tell you what, it makes a huge difference. You can actually tell them what you want them to wear that day to go out. You can actually tell them what time they need to show up on a job. You can, but again, it's not just telling them. It's both sides of it. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of wisdom in there and a lot of experience, and I just learned something, which is, not only if you're watching this can you learn something, but also if you're presenting on this. Yeah. Well, hey, let's scroll that text in number again real quick. Make sure if you have questions, and if you have them specifically for one of these guys, then you can specify that. Otherwise, I'll just throw the questions out. So, but we do want to handle those. Make sure that anything you want to know, we can get you an answer for. And if we don't know the answer, we'll do our best to find it out.
Absolutely.
So, well, we've been talking about it, guys, kind of this whole time, through selling, through installation challenges. We've been talking about kind of the big elephant in the room, so to speak, which is communication, right? All of it kind of comes down to that. But let's dive into the actual communication portion of it and talk about just how important that is and how to do that best. I guess we could call it setting and managing expectations. So, Don, do you mind kind of kicking us off on that?
Well, sure. I think a lot of this goes back to what Robert said earlier, getting your whole team on the same communication path, right? Making sure that everybody is speaking the same language, that everybody hears the same information. I've got friends that have weekly meetings with their entire team in person, and I used to do that. And again, it's another one of these learning things. And back in my days at New York Carpet World, Marv Berlin literally would make 50 managers drive to Southfield, Michigan every Friday morning to have a manager's meeting so that he could address them all the same. We could do some training the same. We saw our advertising the same. And it's literally getting everybody on that same path. So I think if you're the head of your company, if you're the owner of the business, I think that is on you to make sure that those things are happening. It's also bringing in, like we have weekly meetings in each of the stores. My managers try to give at least a half hour at each meeting to a rep each week to come in and talk about their products and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if that's all what you were looking for, but getting your pre-installation checklist, like Robert said, get it uniform, get it so that you're doing it the same all the time. So it's reputation to the point where when you're having that discussion with the customer about having their house ready for the installer, it's second nature, and you can do it by memory without even having to look at a list.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of having customers sign off on everything that we do. When I came into my company in Birmingham, they had a document for every little situation that went wrong over time, including one of the first things we did was made the customer sign an arbitration agreement. Hi, Mrs. Jones, we're going to do a wonderful job out at your house, but here, sign this arbitration agreement in case we really mess it up.
Yep.
You know?
That gives those warm fuzzy feelings, right?
Yeah, welcome to Don's Carpet One.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's those type of things. We don't need a document for everything. We need to communicate everything. You know,
Yes.
we just need to, maybe you need to have that checklist that you make sure that you don't forget it all. But by the way, when you have a customer sign something that says they're going to do something, be careful. They're going to point it back on you, and it probably can hurt you every bit as bad, you know, pointing it back at you, right?
Yeah.
So, gotta be careful of that. Robert, I'm sure you've got some things, but.
Oh,
Robert,
absolutely.
Gary?
You know, and again, I think it comes down to communication. When I say communication, it's not only the communication with the sales individual, with the customer. He's got to then take that communication, everything that was discussed, how it was discussed, where the seams are going to fall, the seaming diagram. He's got to take all that communication and then get it communicated to the installer, so that the installer, because they weren't there during that sales process, they don't know what was discussed. I got a call the other day when a guy was asking me about, should my installer be following his seaming diagram? Absolutely. We train those guys. Yes, they follow the seaming diagram. You don't know what the discussion was with the end user as to why those seams are in that particular place. But there again, that communication from the end user to the salespeople, it has to happen again, even if it's on paper, maybe it's a phone call, best case scenario, like Don said, face to face. That's then got to be communicated to the installer in a way that he knows and he's prepared to go out and do that particular job and meet with that end user and cover what he needs to cover with them.
Yeah. Seth, right now, I mean, in our situation, like I said, we're an RFMS user, so, you know, we use their Schedule Pro product. We use it, you know, with the core product, but we're also using their mobile product. So we've got installers that literally have iPads. So when they go out to the job, they can literally see the notes that the salesperson put in the order. Their diagrams are attached. Everything is there in one document that they can look at on their iPad. And so they know what my any detail that my salesperson covered with with the customer that was important. I mean, we don't every detail, but anything that is beyond a normal scope of work, they communicate that in the notes section of the order, and then it's all done electronically. I don't have to print out a bunch of paperwork and everything else.
Right.
They just take the iPad out on the job, and they go through everything that they've got to do, including letting us know when the job is done, so that we can go ahead and job cost the ticket and move on to the next order.
So how long have you been doing that? How long have you been with the iPads and everything digital?
Well, on the sales side, we've been doing it for probably a year and a half at least. On the installation side, we just started that several months ago.
Okay. Do you have?
And right now, we're only doing that in Tuscaloosa. We haven't done it up in Birmingham yet. But it's a great process.
So I won't
and
ask
it's
you for
very
metrics.
cost effective.
I won't ask you for metrics today, but overall, how would you say that that's impacting? Is that leading to happier customers? Is it leading to better communication with them? Obviously, it sounds like.
Well, I mean, I would tell you, I believe we do a great job with happy customers now. I mean, I think what it's going to do is it just makes the process easier. Less questions, less phone calls, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's
anytime you can cut down that the installer can be working and doing what they need to do, which is they get paid to work. My guys get, even though they're employees, they get paid by the square foot. So if they're not installing, they're not getting paid. They're not, I don't pay them to stand around and just call me on the phone.
Right.
So anything that I can do to keep them focused on making money for themselves and our company, the better.
Yep. So how does that look differently between? So you said only about 25% that you guys do of residential is new, but how important is that communication? We're talking a lot about communication with the homeowner in occupied, but I'd love for us to discuss a minute that communication with the general contractor or builder in the new homes, and what we can do there to really see a difference. Gary, it sounds like you're ready.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a challenge when you talk to builders because, as anybody that's been in our industry for a long time realizes that, GCs will definitely lie to you. They'll tell you all kinds of things before you get out there. I remember getting to a job site, actually one of my crews got out there and they, the GC's telling me everything's ready to go. The installer gets there, there was a bunk of drywall still sitting in the living room. None of the drywall had been installed, or just a portion of the drywall. I can't install. There's still drywall in there, and the GC's arguing with me. Now, today, at least with iPhones and things like that, you could take a picture of it. Back then, we're talking back in the 80s, we had to drive out to the job site, bring the GC out there, and try to explain to them, we can't install with this here, and you want to have the walls up.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, with our industry, we're the last ones in when it comes to new construction. So if the job is behind schedule and over budget, they want us to do it cheaper and faster. Don can attest to this, I'm sure. They're always looking for us to cut corners and try to give them better value. And not necessarily better value, more profit for them. But we're here to try to help them, is what we try to do, what any kind of a retailer is going to do, and try to give them that information.
Yeah. So Robert, any thoughts on that? And Dawn will of course loop back to you as well.
Well, on the new construction there again, you're going into a place where you're installing the very first floor. So whether it's concrete that could have some moisture issues, that we're putting a product over it that don't breathe. The only thing else I'll throw out there that we didn't bring up yet, and we did a great session on floor prep back in, we did Taylor Time. I don't remember what session it was.
I think
in fact, I got to give a plug here. I got to give a quick plug here and the kudos to Gary and the fellow that was on that. I was talking to my buddies over at IUPAT the other day, and they said, Robert, we actually used that in a training session with the guys. We would play parts of it, and then we would pause it, and we would go over what you guys discussed, and we'd play it again. So
wow.
Kudos, guys. I thought that was pretty great. But,
That's awesome
that is
to hear.
something that it was pretty neat, I thought. But with the product category, as far as it used to be, you're going in, you're putting carpet in all these homes. I mean, now you were doing wood, you're doing LVT. I think what we have been seeing now for years, and it's why prep companies have really stepped up and doing a lot of training, is the importance of floor prep. When you're putting down a 7/16 8-pound cushion, you're putting a big thick piece of carpet over the top of it. The prep is important, but it's not near as important as suddenly now you're putting an 1/8-inch piece of LVT plank over the top of that thing. So the prep issues, we've seen them arise quite a bit in the last few years. And so I'd express the importance of getting the guys that you're using, making sure they're aware and qualified to do some good prep work for some of the products that we're doing these days, especially the new construction. Because there again, you've got the mud that's all over the floor, the bumps, the scraping, the prep. Typically in new construction is going to be a lot more than you'll usually run into when you're occupied.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that you're going to get out on is a site super that the builder uses, if they have one, to be honest with you. Some of them don't, but I'll tell you, you can always tell the well-oiled machines, right? There's site supers out there that they're awesome. I mean, they don't have a flooring installer come out on the job unless it's ready to be done, because they know it's just a waste of everybody's time. I will tell you, technology is our friend. When somebody tells me something, and especially if it's been somebody that I'm not used to hearing the truth from, and they send us out willy-nilly, I will tell you, take a picture of the job, show me what the floors look like right now, show me what the rooms look like, and I'll get you on my books. And I've got a dealer friend in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida, that does just that. He will not schedule his installer until the builder has given him pictures of what the job site looks like, is ready the day before. He says, I'll send them, but you're gonna pay a fee if they can't do the work.
Yeah.
You got to be organized, and it's tough. I'll tell you, especially with subs. These guys go out and work, and they want a trip fee. They want to go back up. You can't blame them. I mean, it's wasting their time.
Yep.
Hey Seth, if you don't mind, I got a quick question. I actually had this arrive from a guy, and seeing where some of the business has been over especially the last year. I know residential has gone crazy, building is going crazy right now, homes are selling like crazy. I was talking to a retailer the other day, and he said, he does a little bit of builder business, and this is kind of directed to you, Don. And he said, but I've really never really. So he said, his question was, did he feel it, it's something he should pursue? Does he feel he should kind of look a little closer at that? Are the margins worth it? And I told him, it's a good question. What do you think, Don?
I maybe. I think there's a lot of that just goes on that you don't deal with it half the time.
I think we're getting a little bit of breaking
Yeah.
up. We are having we're getting hit on the edge here with the winter storm, so we may have some internet issues. But Robert,
I
what was
heard
your
about every
question?
third of Robert's
We lost a little bit, Robert.
Robert, were you asking about the direction of products? What was it you were asking?
No, I was actually, had someone, that basically was inquiring he does a little bit of builder business now, and he didn't know if maybe looking into pursuing that segment a little bit further would really be worth his while.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of it going on in his area, but he's just never really gotten involved in it.
Okay. So diversity is probably a good move. Again, how much do you jump in? It depends on how big a company you have, right? I try to get each of my salespeople to deal with a builder. I'm not a track guy. I don't go after the Lennars or the Pulte's or the D.R. Hortons of the world. I'm not in that world. There's people that play in that realm, and they do it really well. So that part of it's not me. But I think when you get into these builders that build anywhere from 5 to 15 homes a year, 5 to 20 homes a year, and there's a lot of these guys doing it. They usually have a remodeling company too, so you want to get that business as well. I think like commercial work, and even bid work under most retailers can handle bid work under $100,000 projects, and it's not a bad thing to go into. Once you get up over that number, there's a lot more infrastructure that you got to have to support it.
Interesting. Thank you, Don.
Yeah, we've actually had a couple questions come in, so I'm going to go ahead and ask those, and then we're going to talk about the bottom line and some of those kind of take-home actionable items. But let's go ahead and put that text-in number up there again if you haven't texted any questions in. So this question actually is for Dawn. It says, what changes have you made to your showroom to accommodate COVID regulations, and what effect has that had on your business?
So flooring dealers, retailers, I think we have been social distance probably since the beginning of time. I would love to have 20 to 50 customers come in my store every day, but they don't. Our stores are spaced out. Our displays are spaced out. It's very easy for us to keep people at a distance. In Alabama, masks are required. They're requested to be when you go into business. Our people all wear masks. There are times that if the customer says, hey, I don't care if you got one on, we leave that up to the interaction of when we're with the customer. But we do regular sanitizing of our workspaces, sample checkout, when they come back. But we're still going into customers' homes when they'll allow us to, Again, social distancing never really was a problem in a retail store.
Yeah.
I love how they can social distance in Costco. The store now is limited to 469 people from the 800 that they could have in there before,
Yep.
But, unless you got a retail store different than mine, we don't usually get more than, 3, maybe 4 customers in at a time.
Right. Okay. So it hasn't. Bottom line for that is you haven't seen a huge impact there, and you haven't had to change a lot of protocols aside from cleaning and sanitizing and all that stuff. So
just the normal stuff. We have sanitizers for people when they come in and stuff.
Another question came in, says, do you feel with the current or possibly future environment that someone should consider adding an outside or in-home sales force? So probably to Dawn again.
Well, again, we do in-home sales. Most of our leads today, I mean, what we swapped out is walk-in traffic has gone down for most retailers, but we get a lot more calls because of either, advertising or the web. Many times, our salespeople just go right out to the customer's house when they call. They qualify them over the phone, try to find out the different types of products. Most customers have done some research on the net. They're out there, they know what kind of products they're looking for, but you do some basic qualifications over the phone, and we go out there. Currently, we haven't added just an outside team, but every one of my people go and close in the house today.
Okay.
Again, we sell off of iPads. Everything's done on our iPads. We take the money. Everything's done in the home. We don't have to have a bunch of paper.
Yeah, which definitely helps, I'm sure. One more question. I'm going to kind of pose this to the group. And then again, if you have questions, and then stick with us, because in a moment here, we're going to be talking about the bottom line and some of those key takeaways that you can implement today and see a change. So this is the last question is, I'm hearing different opinions about the product direction in 2021 for residential. Is it possible that carpet might have a comeback, or do you see it continuing to lose market share to LVT and things like that? So, Dawn, you want to answer that first? Then I'd love to hear from.
Personally, I think carpet can have a comeback. I think carpet got a bad rap on a lot of things. I mean, I saw the days where a customer walked in the door and said, "Hey, I want to redo my master bedroom. I'd like to see some carpet." And the salesperson says, "Well, here, let me show you this LVT." It's like they weren't even listening to what the customer said. Carpet is an easy product to care for and maintain. I mean, it's much easier to vacuum a product, especially with the vacuums today that have HEPA filters, and they do a much better job cleaning than they ever did, than it is mopping a floor. So I think carpet's going to have a resurgence, especially when you're dealing with carpet tiles and commercial carpet tiles, and if we ever get into that mode in the retail world again. I know that's been tried a few times.
Yeah. Okay, Robert, thoughts on that? We're going to start seeing more.
I think I would agree with Don. I know me personally, I went to the hard surface route and put woods and this and that and the other, but I can tell you in my bedrooms, I miss the carpet. I like the warmth. I like the feel. I like the sound, deadening properties of carpet. So I would not be surprised. Do I think it's going to come back and take over LVT again? Oh, by no means. I think LVT continue with just the selection process. I mean, they're making that stuff just so amazing. The texture, the colors that they're putting in it, the distressed looks. But I do feel that there again, especially after this cold spell in Texas, nobody's going to want a hard floor anymore. But yeah, I think the warmth, the softness of the carpet, I think it's. I don't see it going down anymore. I could probably see it on a little bit of an uptick, maybe.
Okay. And Gary, any thoughts on that?
I agree completely. I've been in this industry long enough to see that everything just always seems to come back around. Carpet is coming down, but what's the first thing people do when they put down a hard surface floor? They buy an area rug and put it on top of it.
Yeah.
So you're putting carpet back down there. You might as well just go wall to wall. You're going to have better acoustics. It's going to be more comfortable, and like Robert said, it's going to be much warmer underfoot, especially this time of year.
Okay. Well, let's be sure and talk for a few minutes here about the bottom line. So I'm gonna kind of ask each of you individually, but then feel free to interrupt each other as well. But I'd like to hear some things for our viewers that they can implement. I know we've already had a lot of great things shared, but I'd love to hear some specific things that you can say related to this residential market. What can you do? What can you change in your process, whether it be to a flooring manufacturer sales rep, all the way through to an installer, or or even I guess anyone involved in that process. Installation tech, manager, whatever it be. So Dawn, let me start with you, and let's start with that sales process. What is something that you could recommend that someone implement in their business today to see a difference, whether it's a flooring manufacturer or a retailer?
Okay, so this is going to be kind of a little off center here, but I'm going to tell you, as an industry, we are limited right now to what we can sell by what can be professionally installed, right? We take the time and invest in our salespeople with training and ongoing sales classes or ongoing product knowledge classes. It's time that we, A, look at getting employee installers, B, make sure we invest as much into their training, whether they're a sub or not, and get them upgraded. Get them the best knowledge that they can be on the products that we're installing and invest in them. It's a tough thing when they're a subcontractor, but you got to look at yourself. I can say you're a sub and I'm not going to spend money on you, and I can just sit there and worry about how I'm going to get and grow my business 10% next year because I don't have 10% more installers. So to me, it's working that path to open up you can only sell as much as the smallest hole in your pipeline will allow to flow through.
Yep.
If you can sell something this much, but you can only put it through a hole that big, it's not going to work for you.
Yep.
Right?
Very true.
Pipes bust, right? That's what happens in Dallas right now. The pipes bust.
Yep.
Absolutely true.
Robert,
Yes.
what's your
You know,
what's your
I,
words
and
of
again, I
wisdom?
think the best, my best words, Seth, would certainly be, kind of a lot of the stuff we've covered, but maybe it's time we emphasize just a little bit on. One would be, again, from the minute the customer comes in, qualifying the customer. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen to their concerns, listen to their issues, before you just start trying to put them into something that's not going to work for them. Second, communicating everything we just discussed, communicating that well to the installers. And Don just had it because it was certainly on my list. Don't be so afraid to invest in your installation force. So what if it costs you a little bit of money? And obviously, in my position, I've always been a big advocate for training. Training and education, you never can get enough of it. So take the time, spend the money, invest in that team. I guarantee you it will pay back tenfold, by all means. So communication, training, qualifying. I will throw one other thing, again, we've talked about trying to make the entire process, whether they're subs or they're employees, to make us look like one team. So in doing that, I'll give you some ideas. Excuse me. You want to retain your installation team, make them a partner. Invite them to the Christmas parties. I know we used to do an appreciation breakfast where the salespeople would actually come in, we'd rent these little griddles, and they would actually make breakfast for the installers, subs, employees, it didn't matter. Summer picnics, we would have the sales team, the installers, we'd be playing softball. Just do things that involve your entire team and not just one or the other.
Yeah. Treat people like people.
Yeah.
So, Gary, thoughts?
I agree with both you guys. Education is absolutely key, and treating your team members like team members. Your installers and your salespeople cannot be enemies. They need to get along, they need to work together, but they need to be informative to each other and try to help each other along. And it's all critical, because the more we do, the better their business is going to be, the more referrals you're going to get. And repeat and referral business, as Don would know, that is pre-sold business. Those people walk in the door, they're already sold on your business. All you really have to do is find them the right product. Educating the salespeople so that they don't oversell a product. It was brought up earlier today, they talk about waterproof flooring. Well, what does waterproof really mean? It just means the flooring is not affected by moisture. It doesn't mean moisture is not going to build up underneath it, things like that. So the flooring salesperson has to pre-qualify them and let the people know what they need to look for, especially if you're working on an on-grade slab or something like that. So try to qualify everything, look at all of your options, and give your customer the best possible options that they can afford. That's really what it's all about.
Perfect. Well, guys, it is 11:59, so I think we wrapped this one up beautifully. I don't see any other questions at the moment. Again, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to our tech line. We'll put that up here on the screen for you. You can always, of course, contact Robert with CFI as well. I know he'll be happy to take those as well. So just want to thank you so much, Robert, for your time today. Thank you for joining us all the way from Belize, where it's beautiful, warm,
Absolutely,
and sunny.
guys.
And so really appreciate that. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us as well. It's been a pleasure to have you and experience just a little bit of the knowledge and expertise that you have. Gary, as always, thank you for being here as well. And
Happy to be here.
just remember to connect with us on social media. Go to our website. Please download our app. Our app is amazing. Just search Taylor Adhesives in either Android or Apple store, and you'll see that. It has all sorts of neat stuff in there. And please make plans to join us again next month. Third Tuesday of every month is Taylor Time Live, so join us next month for that. And until then, remember, we're Taylor Adhesives, and we're with you every step.